Delapre Abbey and to our very first Festival of Books, and I would just like to introduce Deborah Delano to talk about her work.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, and thanks ever so much for coming out today. I really, really appreciate your turning out and to see all your smiling faces in front of them. I've been writing now the best part of a decade, and today I'm going to read from all three of my books, if time permits. And it's in between readings, I'm hoping that you will ask me some questions or make comments or heckle, and I'll do my very best to respond. So I've been writing for a little while. It started when I broke my arm, and I was off work for 6 weeks and in plaster from ear to ear, and so I couldn't even effectively twiddle my thumbs. So I thought, you know what, I'll write about the experience, because it was quite traumatic. I fell over on ice, and when I took my glove off, my hand was actually on wrong. So I thought, you know what, writing about the experience might exercise it for me. So I did, and what I found was I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, and I also found that there was a very strong connection between that and the day that I was born. So I thought, well, I'll write about that as well. And when I finished that, I just kept unravelling that thread. And by the end of it, I've got a collection of stories. Stories about my life, stories about my family, stories about growing up a working class lesbian in Northampton at a time when those things had very, very different meanings, as I'm sure you'll be aware. And I'm very happy for the world we live in today. Although I have to say, you're not going to find me skipping about with joy at the state of the world. We've still got Trump in the White House. Transphobic and homophobic crime is still rising, and homosexuality is still punishable by death in some countries. So, you know, there's still work to be done. But that said, when I read normally, when I've done these things before, I tend to read from later on in my life. That's my coming out experience. But because I'm in Northampton with my people, and I'm in Northampton with my people in at the centre of England, at the centre of the universe even. I'm going to read actually from the things you do, and the first thing I'm going to. So that's a picture of me showing off. Nothing much has changed, has it? That's a picture of me showing off at my sister Chris's wedding. I'm going to read the first chapter actually. It's called On Being Born. And that's a picture of me not long after that event. So, hang on. I didn't used to need these, but I'll do these days. So you're going to have to bear with me. Here with my glasses. So, On Being Born. Imagine, if you will, a council estate, constructed in the early 1950s. Solid brick-built houses attractively curving around a huge oval expanse of uninterrupted grass. Streets named after rivers, flowing in symmetry and occupied by those families, lucky enough to have qualified by dint of living in utter squalor for the heretofore unheard of luxury of secure and sanitary housing for the working classes. Every property featured a bathroom and indoor toilet, open lawns to the front, and neat little fenced-off gardens to the rear. The estate won a prize for its design, and at its heart stood a precinct of shops, catering to every need of the 1950s family. There was a butcher who made filthy jokes and gestures with sausages and slabs of liver for a receptive audience of housewives. A grocery store where local news of illegitimate births, shotgun weddings and domestic beatings could be exchanged. A bakery, with its array of Eccles cakes, coconut madeleines and individual fresh cream trifles, served by a very dainty parcel-woman who foresaw gossip of any kind. A post office, where people posted parcels to their more glamorous emigre relatives in Australia. And a hairdresser, who it later transpired was a closeted lesbian. A hardware store, with that smell now lost forever. Today these shops are boarded up. They're fallen victim to the out-of-town superstores. The illiterate graffiti adorning the metal shutters advises, fuck off, wanker. The primary school closed down under Thatcher's on your bikes economic strategies of the 80s. The streets and houses bear the ravages of unemployment, crime, drugs and alcohol abuse. And nestled among them, the government has cynically cited a refuge for asylum seekers. The estate is called King's Heath, and it lies on the northern edge of Northampton, in the exact middle of England. And it is here that my family lived in the Maisonette. My mum had been given the key to a new house on the estate in 1952. But we moved from this spacious property with its own garden to the Maisonette above the old people's flats. No one knows why. It can only be supposed that my mum had fallen victim to one of the sort of sexual scandals to which she was occasionally prone. By 1958, we were a family of 5. My mum and dad, 2 sisters aged 16 and 11, and a brother, not quite 7. It was he, Martin, who on this hot summer's day fell while playing on the Maisonette steps, and, like his little sister 52 years later, it was he, my brother Martin, who on this hot summer's day fell while playing on the Maisonette steps, and, like his little sister 52 years later, stuck his arm out to break his fall. His arm went through the metal railings, but he kept falling. My mother, when recalling the incident, as she did often, said, "Oh, it will bend back like a banana." The sight of this disfigured limb precipitated an early labour, and my mother retreated to her bed, where she spent the remainder of the day screaming at ear-piercing decibels. My dad, similarly prone to dramatic overreaction, and believing my brother to have been the victim of a violent attack, flew into a psychotic rage. This frequently preceded an epileptic fit, and indeed would have done so on this occasion had not my maternal grandmother the sense and strength to thump him repeatedly on the back while explaining the true nature of the incident. This remedy proved efficacious, and sufficiently calmed, my dad was dispatched to the hospital with Martin on the bus. My grandmother then proceeded to the birth, a rite she has performed on innumerable former occasions, unencumbered by any qualification, save experience and naked wit. A wise woman, to be sure. She was the sort of woman who rolled up her sleeves and got on with it. Much to her chagrin, however, a midwife latterly arrived on the scene, discharged and then debarred my grandmother from the labour room, following a disagreement about the nearness of my arrival. Years of know-how, casually swept aside by modern medicine's march of progress. When I finally arrived at 10 p.m. that Saturday evening, I was strangling on my umbilical cord. The housewife, the midwife, had resolutely ignored my mother's pleas that I was imminent, and when I slithered into the world, no scissors could be procured to sever the noose. This operation must eventually have been performed because I lived, though the emotional cord with which my mother bound me proved more difficult to disentangle. Most of the day's events have been described to me by my sister Jerry, then 11 years old. She and my cousin spent much of the day sitting on the stone steps outside the Maisonette, kicking at dirt and listening to the screaming. At the news of my arrival, they went door to door on the estate, proclaiming my birth to the neighbours. Apparently no one was very interested, and one woman slammed her door in their faces. No doubt someone my mother had wronged. Later that night, Martin crept into my mother's bedroom, sporting his plaster cast. "You've got a little sister," Mum said, and cuddled into her. "I'm still your only boy," he replied, burying his head in her neck.